This is Pathway to Careers, exploring high-value careers with students, an educator's guide. In this course, we examine methods and strategies for connecting students to high-value careers. This module will focus on understanding career pathways and methods for building these pathways and sharing them with students. In addition, the components of effective career planning will be discussed, along with a review of the process of guiding students toward employment success. My name is Dr. Danielle Talent. Contact me anytime if you have questions. To give you an idea of where this presentation is headed, we'll spend a majority of our time looking at career pathways. We'll begin with a review of how pathways are defined within the National Career Clusters framework, and then look at the P2C approach to building pathways. Strategies for introducing these pathways to students will also be discussed. Following our discussion of pathways, we'll move into exploring the main components of effective career plans. These plans are typically developed after students have made a career decision and are used to map out what students will need and how they will meet these needs as they progress toward their career goals. Finally, we'll take a moment to bring everything together that we have looked at in this course and review the overall process for guiding students toward employment success. As mentioned, we'll spend a fair amount of time focusing on understanding career pathways and exploring methods for building these pathways, as well as strategies for sharing them with students. While we move through this topic, it's important to keep in mind that there are numerous ways to think of career pathways, and how we define pathways here may differ from how you may use pathways. The approach we'll be discussing here aligns most closely to the National Career Clusters framework, so we'll take a moment to review this framework before we move into the P2C approach to building career pathways. In an earlier presentation, we looked at how to develop and use high-value career tables. Using these tables to inform students of high-value careers in the region is a solid starting point for incorporating LMI into career exploration activities. An additional method of helping students connect with regional career opportunities is to develop and share career pathways. This leads to the question of what are career pathways? And this can be somewhat difficult to answer because there are many ways to approach this question. First, definitions of pathways vary. For some, pathways represent the individual steps needed to prepare for a single career. For example, a pathway might outline all education and training needed to become an industrial engineer. For others, pathways provide a more general set of guidelines for entry into a collection of careers. For example, a pathway might target careers in therapeutic services, including nurses and physicians, as well as therapy-related careers like physical therapists. Information used in building pathways can also vary. Some focus only on education requirements, while others display additional information such as pathway-related occupation choices and regional labor market data. In general, there is no one right way to develop pathways. There is currently no solid consensus on what pathways should look like or the information that should be incorporated into these pathways. So pathways will look different depending on how they were created and how they are intended to be used. Regardless of what they look like, most pathways do provide useful information to students by summarizing career destinations and displaying information on how to prepare for particular careers. The National Career Clusters framework offers one approach to viewing pathways. Because this is a common organizational system used in education, P2C uses this framework to conceptualize and build pathways. So our discussion will center on building pathways using this approach. Before we get into building pathways, let's do a quick review of career clusters, pathways, and programs of study as defined by the National Career Clusters framework. Using this framework, occupations are grouped into 16 different clusters based on similarities in foundational knowledge and skills. These core skills are viewed as the foundation on which students develop more advanced industry-specific skills. Detailed descriptions of the knowledge and skills for each cluster can be found at the web address displayed on this slide. Within each cluster, pathways have been identified that focus on a smaller subset of related occupations. For each pathway, courses and training programs are outlined that can guide students as they progress toward their career goals. Career pathways generally have their own knowledge and skill requirements. Pathways can have multiple entry and exit points. Some careers have minimal education requirements while others require an advanced degree. The example here is from the Minnesota State CareerWise Education Resource Center. This diagram is for the Therapeutic Services pathway in the Health Sciences cluster. Along this pathway, several occupations are listed at various education levels. Home health aide is listed as requiring a high school diploma, all the way up to chiropractors and dentists requiring an advanced degree. Pathways designed like this example are useful because they help students see pathway-related careers that are available as they move forward, as well as potential career choices at various exit points. At a finer level, going beyond career pathways, are programs of study. Programs of study offer a more comprehensive and focused outline of courses and trainings that lead to specific careers. Typically, programs of study result in a certification or degree that provides entry into a field of work. Descriptions of various programs are available on the IPEDS website, where programs are listed using the Classification of Instructional Programs taxonomy. The description here is for the Dental Assistant program. This program is in the Health Science cluster within the Therapeutic Services pathway. So how does this all fit together? The Career Clusters framework moves from general to specific. At the cluster level, jobs are classified according to foundational knowledge and skills. At the pathway level, jobs are grouped based on common courses and training programs. Programs of study describe particular courses and sequences needed for certificates and/or degrees. This diagram from the Nebraska Career Education Model demonstrates the various levels of the career cluster framework: the cluster level, the pathway level, and the program level. In the previous example, we were looking at the program of study for dental assistants. This program can be found in the Health Sciences cluster within the Therapeutic Services pathway that includes the dental assistant program. As we move forward in this presentation, we're going to focus in on the pathway level and look at the P2C approach to building and using pathways with students. With the P2C approach to career pathways, the National Career Clusters framework is used to provide a basic foundation for understanding the relationship between clusters, pathways, and programs of study. Specifically, the idea the occupation groupings become more specific and narrowed as you move from cluster to pathway and then to program of study. In the P2C approach, emphasis is placed on identifying pathway careers and the education opportunities aligned with these careers. The overall objective is to outline career opportunities at various levels of education, providing students with an idea of the multiple entry and exit points available within a pathway. After pathway-related careers have been mapped out, the P2C pathways summarize secondary and post-secondary education opportunities and requirements to help students make informed decisions about courses and training programs. Ultimately, the P2C pathways focus on two basic components. First, we outline the entry and exit points and help students become familiar with the regional employment opportunities at various education levels. Then we focus on education and training and provide a basic map of the secondary and post-secondary training opportunities that can help prepare students for occupations within a pathway. Here's an example of a pathway. This is the first page of a two-page pathway map that displays the entry and exit points for the pathway. The first thing to notice is that the pathway moves from left to right, with occupations requiring lower levels of education at the left and those requiring higher levels of education at the right. We divide our pathways into job zones, which have been identified by O-Net. Each occupation has been assigned a specific job zone by O-Net, and this information is used to place pathway occupations in zones 1 through 5. Within each zone, occupations are listed by highest demand, so those with the most annual openings appear at the top of the list. So there are a few things to note on this page that are important to include in pathway designs. First, the cluster title appears at the top of the page, along with the pathway title. This information lets users know the cluster and pathway that the information is for. Entry and exit points are also visible in the pathway, with available occupations listed within each zone. This pathway also lists labor market data for each occupation to encourage informed career decisions with regard to market demand and expected annual wage. The top 5 high-value careers are marked with a star to easily show which pathway careers are highest in openings overall, while also providing a living wage or better. Finally, this pathway presents occupations that are relevant to a specific region. In this case, the information is for the northern middle region of Tennessee. The second page of the pathway outlines education and training opportunities that align with the occupations listed on the first page. This education page displays the general high school requirements that are specific to high schools in the region. In addition, the available high school career programs that most closely align with the pathway occupations are summarized, along with courses offered within these programs. The regional post-secondary schools are presented and can direct students to accredited schools in their region that offer post-secondary training. Toward the bottom, programs of study for occupations on the first page are listed. For this pathway, there were few occupations that required an advanced degree, so education programs are listed primarily for the Job Zone 3 occupations. Finally, it should be noted that all information on this page is focused on regional opportunities that students can access in nearby areas. The good news is that pathway templates are available for you to use in the Pathway to Careers resource library. These templates provide the opportunity for you to create your own pathway using data relevant to your region. The first step in using these templates is to identify a cluster and pathway. This can be chosen in one of 2 ways. You can choose clusters and pathways based on which offer the greatest number of high-value careers in your region, or you can choose clusters and pathways that best align with current programs offered within your school, district, or institution. Next, you'll need to use the P2C dashboard to explore labor market data for your district. Once you're in the dashboard, use filters to search within a specific cluster, pathway, and job zone. In the template, list occupations highest in demand for each job zone. As a reminder, demand is determined by looking at annual openings, so you'll want to list occupations with the most openings first. After you have listed occupations by demand within each zone, add stars next to the top 5 high-value occupations for the pathway. In the P2C dashboard, high-value occupations can be easily identified using the Perkins 5 filter at the top of the data tables. Finally, list the workforce region for your district at the bottom of the template. You can find this information in the P2C dashboard displayed in the text at the top of the data tables. Let's move into the P2C dashboard now and look at how we can use the data in the dashboard to complete this template. This is the TSBA District Data Dashboard. It's the P2C dashboard that displays labor market data for the state of Tennessee. In this particular dashboard, we want to focus on the section labeled What and Where are jobs in your region. In other versions of the P2C dashboard, this section is labeled Explore Career Clusters. So let's go ahead and get into this section. Once here, you have the option to select any of the 16 different career clusters. In the examples that we have been looking at, we've been focusing on the architecture and construction cluster. So let's go ahead and get into that cluster. Once here, you need to filter the data for your particular district. To do this, just go into the drop-down menu and select your district. We are now looking at data for occupations within the architecture and construction cluster, and all data for these occupations is now focused on the primary workforce region for Alcoa City Schools, which happens to be the East Tennessee region. Now that we have the data focused on a particular career cluster and a specific district, we now need to get everything focused on a specific pathway. To do this, there are several filter and sort functions that appear in the table below. We just need to find the pathway section of the table, go to the magnifying glass, and then click on equals. At this point, we can enter whichever pathway we want to explore. So since we have been looking at the construction pathway, let's go ahead and enter construction here. Once this has been done, now all of the occupations being displayed in the table are for the construction pathway within the architecture and construction career cluster. For job zone, we can go ahead and just click on equals, and we can select any of the job zones that we want to specifically focus on. It's probably easiest to start with the lowest job zone first, so we'll look at job zone 1. It's not surprising that we would only have a few occupations show up here because there are very few occupations in general that are at that low job zone that require a high school diploma or less. So here we only have 2 occupations, and these would be entered into job zone 1 and creating those pathways. So we would list the occupation title. We'd also provide the annual openings and the median wage for these 2 occupations. The next step would be to go in and look at job zone 2. So we would just change that job zone now to 2, and several occupations now appear. At this particular job zone, a high school diploma is required for employment. We can take the top 5 occupations here and enter those into the job zone 2 section of the pathway. So we would look at construction laborers, carpenters, operating engineers, painters, and helpers. All 5 of those occupations would be listed by demand for job zone 2. If you happen to see stars instead of actual numeric data, this simply means that there was insufficient data to present for that particular occupation. This can happen for a couple of different reasons. Either there was too much variability in the data, or the data is actually being suppressed to protect the privacy of individuals in that occupation. So there are a couple of reasons why data may not be appearing. Once you have listed occupations for job zone 2 by demand, then you can go ahead and repeat this process for job zones 3, 4, and 5. The next step in creating the pathways would be to go in and identify the top 5 high-value careers for that particular pathway. The easiest way to do this is to use the Perkins 5 filter. The Perkins 5 filter appears at the top of the table, and you can just click that box and select Go. Once that has been done, you'll need to go back and set your pathway again. So now what we're seeing in the table are all occupations within the construction pathway that meet the criteria as a high-value occupation. In other words, any occupation that is below 35,000 or has negative growth will have been eliminated from the table. In addition, we see occupations being sorted by annual openings, so we've got the highest in demand appearing at the top of the list. Basically, what we can look at here are the top 5 occupations in this table. That includes electricians, first-line supervisors, carpenters, operating engineers, and plumbers. These would be the top 5 occupations that you would want to put a star next to in your pathways. The star signifies that that occupation is one of the top high-value occupations for the cluster overall. The last piece of information that you're going to need in completing the pathways is to look at the workforce region. The primary workforce region for Alcoa City Schools is the East Tennessee region. You would go ahead and use that information in the bottom part of the pathway where it asks you to label and identify the workforce region. So these are the primary steps that you would follow in the P2C dashboard in creating career pathways for students. So what we just reviewed was a more manual approach to creating the career pathways. The benefit of that particular approach is that you can customize the pathways and add additional information as needed. The P2C dashboards also offer the ability to automatically generate these career pathways. To do this, we need to get into the report section of the dashboard. A link to the report section will appear at the top of the page. On this page, you can use the drop-down menus to customize your reports. You'll want to select Career Cluster Maps, then choose your career cluster, select your district, and then make your pathway choice. Once your selections have been made, click Go. This will lead to the generation of a PDF document. On the first page, you'll see the title of the report. On the second page, there will be a brief description of the report. You'll also see some information on career clusters and pathways. And finally, you'll see information on the particular selection that you made. So you were looking at the architecture and construction cluster. We had selected the construction pathway. So all of the occupations being listed now are appropriate for that construction pathway within that particular cluster. So you'll see occupations listed for job zone 1, 2, 3, and 4 listed by highest demand. This is a nice way of quickly generating career pathways where you can get a sense of the occupations available within each zone for that pathway. Again, if you prefer a more customized approach, you can use the manual approach that we discussed earlier. So at this point, let's return to the presentation so we can look at the second page of the pathways that focuses more on education requirements. To complete the second page of the template, you'll want to focus on education and training opportunities available in your region. Begin by adding general high school requirements for each subject area. There are 4 boxes per subject to represent each year of high school. Next, review pathway-related career programs and courses at your school and list these in the box. It is easiest to list the program titles in the first column and the course titles for all programs in the second column. When using the pathways, students can select a program in the first column and then circle or check the related program or course in the second column. You can also include additional pathway-related electives or leave this blank for students to complete on their own. Regional post-secondary schools can be listed next to the high school career programs. In this section, be sure to list only accredited institutions. The last step is to identify post-secondary programs of study for occupations listed on the first page of the pathway. This final step can be a little difficult because it's not always obvious what programs align with each career. To assist with this, there is a crosswalk available on the iPad site that can be accessed using the address on the slide. Use the crosswalk to locate the occupation title and determine the matching programs of study. Choose the program that seems to most closely match the occupation title. When you have completed the template, you should have something that looks similar to this pathway sample, with regional occupations listed on the first page and education opportunities outlined on the second page. Students can use these pathways to get a quick sense of the high-demand jobs available in each zone, as well as the top 5 high-value careers for the pathway. Using this pathway, they can select a career destination and also gain awareness of related careers both within and above or below the zone for their selected career. The second page provides suggestions for education opportunities to help students make progress toward their goals while in high school and beyond. When developing pathways, it's important to keep in mind that not all pathways lead to employment success. Some pathways are limited in high-value career opportunities. For example, pathways within the government and public administration cluster tend to have low-demand occupations. Also, in the hospitality and tourism cluster, pathways here tend to include several low-wage occupations. The solution is to explore labor market data within clusters and pathways and select clusters and pathways that offer several high-value careers. In choosing to focus on clusters and pathways that offer a greater number of high-value careers, this shifts the attention from dead-end pathways to pathways with a higher likelihood of employment success. Once pathways have been developed, we then need to consider how we can use these with students. You can incorporate career pathway maps into career exploration activities much like you would the high-value career tables. To help students select a pathway, use their interests, values, and goals to guide them through this process. Using some of the career exploration resources for personal factors that were described in earlier presentations can help match interests with clusters and pathways. Next, you'll need to assist students in understanding the labor market data displayed in the pathways. Ideally, students will have gone through a brief introduction to labor market data before being exposed to the pathways. So at this point, you'll want to provide students with a brief reminder of how to use annual openings and median wages to compare occupations. Specifically, you want to encourage students to focus on occupations that offer the most openings with median wages above $35,000. After reviewing the labor market data, help students identify a career target within the pathway. This may require some time exploring career descriptions using ONET or the Occupational Outlook Handbook, so students can become more familiar with various careers. As students are identifying a potential career target, remind students to keep external factors in mind. Occupations with few openings will be more challenging to find a job, while those with low wages may not meet their lifestyle goals. Most importantly, be sure students realize the power of a career pathway in helping them see that their career choice is only one stepping stone among many. Their career is not the only destination. There are many related career choices above, below, and within their selected target point. In other words, they have the flexibility to enter and exit the pathway at multiple points. After a career target has been identified, students can use the education portion of the pathway to outline a plan for achieving career goals. They will want to start first with outlining their secondary education requirements and then begin researching potential post-secondary schools and the available programs within these schools. So let's take a moment to return to our roadmap for career exploration and understand where pathways might be most useful. It's recommended that pathways be introduced when exploring external factors. Be sure to provide a foundation for exploring the pathways beforehand. Specifically, introduce career clusters so students are familiar with how the pathways fit within the career clusters framework. Also explain basic terms and definitions that students will need to understand the meaning of the data displayed in the pathways. When students have a foundation for exploring the pathways, provide opportunities for them to review the pathways and explore potential careers. Finally, students can move to the last step of considering personal and external factors in choosing a career. Here is where you want to encourage them to review their interests, values, and goals, as well as the labor market data in the pathways when making a career selection. Using pathways with students can have several benefits. First, pathways increase career exposure. When using pathways, students can see several careers listed together, which can help broaden their perspective on potential career choices. Second, pathways help build an understanding of related careers, which can provide students with a sense of career flexibility. With this flexibility, students feel less pressure to achieve a single career goal and instead can embrace several career possibilities within a pathway. Pathways also promote awareness of entry and exit points. The benefit here is that the career preparation process can be broken into manageable stepping stones. Students can be encouraged to enter a pathway at lower levels as a starting point. Once they have entered the pathway, they may find increased motivation to continue forward. Likewise, students working toward more advanced career goals can see the exit points available if they decide to leave the pathway early. One of the strongest benefits of pathways is that students can gain increased confidence in understanding the education and training that aligns with career goals. For many students, employment failure can result simply because they cannot determine where to start or where to access the necessary education and training to prepare for their desired career. When using pathways, the education information provides a place for them to start with information on more advanced education opportunities. Once they've made a career selection using pathways, tables, or an alternative career exploration process, the next step is to develop a plan for achieving their goal. So let's take a look at some of the components of effective career plans. Career plans are incredibly important in promoting employment success. For many students, the planning process is the most difficult stage in their career preparation. Simply knowing where to start can be a significant challenge for students. Because the uncertainty and unknown can be overwhelming, some students give up before they even begin. Effective career plans guide students through the steps needed to achieve employment success. These plans clearly outline the education and training needed to obtain specific degrees or certificates for entry into a profession. The most successful plans, however, also include detailed financial plans, job search strategies, support services, and methods for maintaining motivation and drive. Students who are provided the opportunity to create career plans are significantly more likely to succeed in achieving their career goals. Ideally, each component of the career plan should be explored in depth, with the opportunity for students to identify needs within each component, along with services and resources that support those needs. This is best accomplished in phases, where one or two components are explored at a time. The process of developing career plans can look something like this. Students will need an opportunity to explore each component and identify needs within each component. For the education component, for example, students will need a chance to explore education requirements for their chosen career. This can be done on O-Net or in the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Once needs have been identified, students will need to list options and available resources that meet those needs. For education needs, this may mean listing potential post-secondary schools and programs aligned with their career choice. It can be helpful for students to include websites, contact information, and locations to gather resources in their career plans. This provides a quick reference for them to go back and find answers to additional questions or get assistance. Plans can be most effective when students incorporate attainable goals and deadlines. This means mapping out what needs to be done with dates to accomplish these tasks. Breaking these down into smaller, manageable steps is best to provide a sense of accomplishment as students work through their plan. As a final element, it can be helpful to set frequent check-in times for students to discuss progress, challenges, and resolutions with a school counselor or teacher. If frequent meetings are not possible with a counselor or a teacher, establish an alternative check-in person, such as a family member or a friend. The idea is to provide points in time to evaluate progress with another individual and brainstorm solutions. Ultimately, the result of the planning process should be a list of the main components of a career plan where needs have been clearly identified, along with relevant resources that meet the needs. The plan should also outline attainable goals and include a check-in schedule with a school counselor, teacher, family member, or friend for staying on track. Overall, plans are essential to promoting employment success. We need to keep in mind that identifying a career goal is often easier than developing a plan to achieve that goal. Because students often struggle in understanding how to prepare for a career, they can benefit from the clear roadmap provided in a plan that outlines what they will need and how to get it. Let's move now into what the process looks like when we pull everything together in guiding students toward employment success. The process of achieving employment success involves 4 essential steps that we have examined individually in this course. In the first step, students engage in career exploration, where they gain awareness of personal and external factors that can influence job satisfaction. Next, they select a career by combining personal and external factors and making an informed career decision. After they have selected a career, they can move into developing a career plan by exploring various needs and identifying resources to meet these needs. Finally, after a plan is in place, students are ready to begin their journey of career preparation through the successful execution of their plan. We should keep in mind that motivation to engage in the career process may be significantly lacking for some students. Ultimately, motivation boils down to providing purpose and answering the question of why. If students can be frequently reminded of the purpose of career exploration activities, this can help. Also, keeping the discussion focused on the positive outcomes of career exploration is the most powerful approach. For example, help them understand that a good career choice has the potential to lead to greater job satisfaction and the ability to meet lifestyle goals. Finally, for some students, personal motivators may need to be identified. Some students may be motivated by different factors. Taking a moment to identify these factors could make a considerable difference in helping these students feel connected and engaged in the process. As we guide students toward employment success, it's useful to keep our goal as educators in mind. Our ultimate goal is to encourage students to make informed career decisions and act on those decisions with effective career plans. We can encourage informed decisions by guiding them through the exploration of personal and external factors and helping students evaluate the importance of these factors. Effective career plans are built by mapping out each component and identifying needs and resources that meet those needs. Providing students the opportunity to understand their career destination and develop a plan for reaching their destination brings their career goals into focus and offers critical direction that can guide their progress toward employment success. To review some of the main points in this presentation, we started off with looking at career pathways and reviewed how pathways are defined within the National Career Clusters framework. Then we explored the P2C approach to building pathways, along with strategies for introducing these pathways to students. Following our discussion of pathways, we moved into exploring the main components of effective career plans and how these plans can be developed with students. These plans are typically developed after students have made a career decision and are used to map out what students need and how they will meet those needs as they progress toward their career goals. Finally, we brought everything together from this course and reviewed the overall process for guiding students toward employment success, including career exploration, career selection, planning, and preparation. If you have questions about any of the information in this presentation, please feel free to contact me at dtalent@nsfored.com. You'll find additional materials and resources at pathwaytocareers.com.